Hey, podcast fans, it's Jim Banks here with Digital Marketing Stories. I've got a fantastic guest for you today. Somebody who actually was put in touch with me through another one of the guests. Anton Schulk put me in front with my guest today, who's Joel Bondorowsky. Joel is a veteran digital marketer like myself, founder of a PPC company called PPC Designs, which is a boutique agency that helps startups and e-commerce brands grow through paid media. So again, he's a man dear to my heart. Since the early 2000s, he's worked with early stage venture companies as well as global names like Wix and SimilarWeb, building campaigns that drive measurable results. Joel is known for spotting opportunities others miss and turning struggling campaigns into consistent revenue. He shared his expertise through partnerships with SEMrush, where he taught thousands of marketers as part of their PPC Academy. I don't know if that's still available. If it is, it was one of the best things I've ever seen on SEMrush Academy. His approach blends data, creativity, and a deep understanding of how to capture demand and create it, helping brands grow in competitive markets. Joel, it is so good to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Jim. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for that welcome. I'm really glad to be here.
I was trying not to make it look like I was reading it, but there was a lot on there, and I've got like really bad eyesight. I normally wear glasses, but I try not to wear glasses when I'm doing podcast episodes. I've got the font up as big as I could get it. I'm like, no, I'm struggling with some of these words. But anyway, we're done with the kind of reading off a script. Now everything is going to be freeform. So like I said, great to have you on the show. Tell us a little bit of your backstory. How did you kind of get into digital marketing in the first place?
That's really like an old story. So I was like, one of the first jobs I had, I was about 18 years old, was doing technical support for a small local internet service provider. Back in the day when people would dial up to connect to the internet. And it was there that actually I had the idea that I could, with a friend of mine who was like one of those little computer hacker kids, we could offer a competing service. So partially competing. So we started a web hosting company, which is one of the things that they offered. A very small web hosting company. We basically built servers, sent them to a data center where people could set up their own web hosting accounts and put sites on it, right? And after we got it set up, we thought, okay, we need clients. How do we get it? It was about that time when really PPC was really discovered an ad network called Go2. Go2.com was the PPC network that all of the search engines at the time used. And when I say search engines, I am talking about Netscape Navigator. .com had the default search engine, the main search engine that was used. Everyone was connected with America Online, and through America Online, they were like doing searches. And whenever they would see paid results, those paid results were served by .com. Basically, I opened up a campaign, and I bid on keywords like website hosting, and I started seeing traffic coming. Before anyone really knew what digital marketing was, but I do remember like kind of figuring things out on my own. For example, I remember thinking to myself, I remember noticing like, you know what, for every 100 visits, I get a sale, and I'm paying about $1 per click. So a sale is cost $100 sale. And not about like what the value of the sales were. And that's kind of like how intuitively I understood all of it, even like knowing any terms, mind you. No one taught me what conversion rate was. I didn't even think of the word conversion rate, although the concept was so. I mean, really, I got into it really, really, really early on. And the reason for it, to answer your question, to make it shorter, was just because I have an online business, and it was, the most effective, efficient way I found to get traffic.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Like, I've talked to people on this show. I've been sort of in the trenches, and often the origins are kind of very, very similar. I mean, I remember having a drawer full of the AOL discs. I mean, every magazine that I used to buy loads of magazines. Every single magazine on the front had a kind of like a sticky tape thing with an AOL disc in it, right? Every single month. I'm thinking, I've got an account with, again, I had an account with them for forever. I think I had one with CompuServe, and as you say, Netscape Navigator 1.0 was just mind blown, right? I mean, I think I got my first computer with Windows 3.1, right? Again, I think I probably could buy like a top of the range Mac now, right? For the same money I paid for the little kind of junky computer that was Windows 3.1. I had to load everything on floppy disks into a hard drive. It was just so clunky. And as you say, like the kind of the terminology that we take for granted today, right? The click-through rates and CPCs and CTAs and everything else, right, was just alien. I mean, as you say, like it was buy traffic for whatever, convert a certain number, that becomes your conversion rate. And
Yeah.
then from there, you can kind of work, or are you not profitable? And, and I think the most important thing then, as it is the ability to be able to kind of track things. So one of the biggest challenges that I've seen, and certainly in the last sort of 12 to 18 months, is the arrival of AI and the adoption of AI by the platforms that we buy traffic from, right? So your Googles and your Microsofts and your Metas and everything else, right? And their insistence that their way is better than anything else because they've got these fantastic algorithms and everything else. I would just love to know what your thoughts are about how good their AI.
Um, the way I see, I mean, basically, Meta ads, Google ads, these companies, I mean, they're businesses, and at the end of the day, like what they build are products that enable them to profit as much as possible, right? They want to be able to make as much money from their advertisers as possible while still giving advertisers a product results. And so their AI, like all their AI is built actually, I think, first to earn them as they can off of traffic that they sell. So an issue that we have is that like with the AI, we lose control and we kind of trust them to figure things out in that learning phase and overspend a little bit in order to figure it out because that's necessary. I mean, I think by the way, AI has always been one way or another. Like when you look at like, PPC platforms, for example, broad match keywords in Google, people searching for something and then matching it if it was loosely related. I mean, that was AI. We didn't crack then, but that was AI.
Because
Google
really, I
back in
mean,
the day also.
Google introduced broad match modified because so many
Yeah.
people complained about how bad broad match was, right? They would match
Yes. Yes.
completely different terms and say, oh, that's a broad match. It's like, well, no, it's completely not what I want. Oh yeah, but it's kind of like it's do whatever you
Yeah.
want, right? I mean, so again, like in New York, new airports, okay, and there's what's the other one called in New York?
LaGuardia.
LaGuardia, right? So, you know, in Google's view, they would say if you type in LaGuardia, they will show stuff for JFK, and it's like, well, no, if I want to go to LaGuardia, I want stuff for LaGuardia. I don't want stuff for JFK. They just go,
Yeah.
it's an airport in New York, therefore they are broadly similar. And I'm thinking, well, yes, they are broadly similar insofar as they're both airports in New York, similarity ends. And I think that they've taken so many liberties, so they had to walk it back, and then obviously they've done away with broad match modified now, right? And again, I think for novice advertisers who don't know anything about PPC, then the AI can be incredibly helpful and incredibly powerful for them, right? Because they don't
Yeah.
understand the way how things work, right? So sometimes they can get some results from running using Google's AI. But I think for practitioners like you and me, right, that have been doing this a long time, they just basically dumb on our capabilities to kind of level the playing field at a level far below we're operating at, right? To make kind of fit everyone rather than kind of just allowing everyone kind of be outliers and say, well, actually, we've got a much more sophisticated model and way of managing to deliver better results than most advertisers that you have on the platform, right? Which is how I
Fit
always kind of
everyone and
saw
also get
things.
you to spend more.
Yeah.
Fit everyone and also make you spend more. Like, okay, like one thing that they got rid of, I mean, they still have exact match keywords. I mean, they use the word to describe it as exact match. But at the end of the day, it's not exact match. Back in the, like, let's say, back in 2012, 2013, if you had a keyword and an exact match, that search had to really exactly match. I mean, I mean, really, really, really like down to exactly every little letter, right? And what that gave advertisers who knew how to hack the system was the ability, not only to hack the system, but you knew how to make the most of the system, was the ability to make campaigns profitable, or at least really understand where search campaigns stand for very little. Like, for example, let's say you're advertising a particular product or service, and that service, let's say, is I don't know, what a small local business, like you're like a local gym, right? Okay. So you could bid on the exact keyword, gyms near me, or gyms in Orlando, Florida. I'm from Orlando, Florida, right? You could bid on exactly gyms in Orlando, Florida, or best gym in Orlando. That's a great keyword. let yourself get 100 clicks from it, which wouldn't cost that much money at the end of the day. But guess what? From those 100 clicks, you will know with confidence what your conversion rate is from people looking exactly for what you have to offer and the value of the visit from those people. You could, back in the day when exact match was really exact match, you could spend very little to get real results. And with all this AI, they take away control. They started to away exact match. And then now they're doing campaign types like Performance Max and whatnot, where you're just sort of like trusting them to figure it out and narrow it down. And because of that, you lose control, you lose the ability to sort of like growth hack it. But there are ways around it. And I think something you like, one thing you keep talking about, like you brought it up earlier, conversion tracking. Sending the best possible signals back to Google and Meta regarding the value of every single click that you're getting is the best way to feed those algorithms what it needs in order for those, AI systems to narrow down and reach that like narrow audience, that narrow target going to be so I mean, like, I think, it sort of shifted in a way. Like back in the day, we could learn a lot with like minimal tracking just by bidding on very few exact words, just like looking at the outcome from that. But now that campaigns have to go so much wilder because of the fact that like, we're trusting AI to really get the most out of it and kind of like get the system to work for you as much as possible is what's very
The
backing.
thing is, like they sort of, again, they came up with this arbitrary number that I think initially was 50, then they changed it to 30 conversions in a month, right? Which again sounds a lot, right? But for a really small business that's selling, fairly high end products, right? That is a versions that need to take place, right? So big
Yeah.
e-commerce retailer, you could sell 50 products in like 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, right? I mean, Black Friday, one of the kind of merchants we work with, and like the number of sales going through on a basis is huge, right? So, to get to that point, they've got enough statistical data to find that's great, the conversion is phenomenal. So what they say is, in the absence of you having, say, 30 conversions in a month, you should optimize for something that's not a conversion, but is something that's maybe a signal towards a conversion. So that could be an add to cart. And I'm like, how much money has ever been put into my bank because of people adding things to the cart? Like zero. No money ever hits the bank if you optimize for a conversion event other than an event that is of value to you, right? So, if you're doing lead generation, then it's somebody fills in a form and becomes a lead, right? What happens after that event is down to the skills and ability of your sales process, right? Your salespeople, else. But from a conversion event, it's that initial conversion. There are reasons why you'd want to pass back the information of quality. So was it a good lead? Did it convert? If it converted, what did it convert to? What sort of value did it have? Send those signals back to Google. They can learn about what to send more of in the future, right? So I think it is you do need to have. I mean, I know whenever I talk to people, they sort of say, "Are you really anti-AI?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not anti-AI. I'm just anti that they broadly speaking put out this marketing blurb, right? Thinly veiling it and saying this is all about the technology. The technology is great, right? But it's only as the way in which the people can sort of use it to their advantage. And I think, to say, settle for something that's suboptimal just to make life easier for acceptable in my view, right? I mean, kind of, if you have like I said, a small business that can't afford to spend 20 grand a month on paid ads, right? Let's say they're saying a big ticket item, it could be, garden furniture or whatever that might cost 5 grand, right? So 30 conversions in a month, if the average order value is 5 grand, it's 150 a month, right? They might spend 10 grand to kind of acquire those sales, might only get 7 or 8 in a month, right? So, if they're going to rely on Google's AI to deliver that, I think it would be far more beneficial for them to be able to continue to run it, manual CPCs to work out exactly what it's worth, right? So you're not on the hook for, really ridiculously high CPCs, right? And then once you've got enough confidence in your own data, then you can switch to something that could be a, cost per conversion, right? Cost per sale, right? So then that way you can say, I'm prepared to pay up to £200 per sale, $200 per sale, right? And anything more than that, I don't want to go there, right? I mean, I'm spending loads of time in Reddit now. I think Reddit's a great platform for understanding what challenges and problems people are having. And this, you see the same thing over and over. People say, I set up a budget for 10. There's one I looked at today. Guy set up a budget for $10 a day, right? Then he after a week, he doubled the budget to $20 a day. The mechanism to, basically just open-ended maximize conversions, and he got a click for $34, right? And you're thinking, well, that's great. I mean, he's obviously got a sort of $34 click on a $20 a day budget. And people, how can you get that? That's because they don't understand that, Google's algorithm allows them to go more than up to double the kind of the daily budget, right? If they feel that the conversion opportunity is presenting itself. But what it does mean is if they go over for 7 days in a row by $10 a day, $20 a day, then they have to go under, right, in the sort of calendar month to enable them to come in at the kind of appropriate level, right? So they're expecting $20 a day times 30, right? So that would be whatever 20 times 30 is, 600, right? I have to this mental arithmetic as I'm going along. So, $600. So in total, you won't spend more than $600, but on some days you might spend up to 40. And they don't understand that, right? But again, Google's algorithm will not say, oh, by the way, you may not want to do that because we could send you traffic that could be way, way above your if you like, your pay rate. I mean, you've got to go auctions. Am I going to go in and be in a position to potentially win, right? So at the beginning, like that was where being able to exact match, I used to sort of say to people, right, I want you to go to a keyboard, right, open up a notepad document, something like that, and type this term, whatever it was, right? So let's say it was, car insurance Orlando, right? Type in car insurance Orlando 20 times really quickly and press the enter key, 20 times, bang, 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 and see if there was consistent ways in which you misspelt it, right? And it used to be, we would grab those misspellings, put those in variations, right? And sometimes it would be, you would forget to put the space between, say, car and insurance. So it would be just car insurance word, right? And, it'd be the plurals, and then there'd be the, like extra I mean, there was all sorts of different variations.
You have to add all of those, remember.
So that the kind of
and
the
so
main.
that's the first way they heard exact match. The first way they changed it was they took that, so that they made some misspellings of it.
Yeah. So it used to be, I used to be in a clean up on some of the, the kind of the big terms. The main head term would probably cost, upwards of $7-8 a click, right? But all these misspellings were like 10 cents, right? And nobody else was bidding on them because nobody else could find them. I found them. I bid on them. There wasn't the same volume of searches for the misspellings as there was for the main term, right? But there was still enough collectively. If you found 40 or 50 variations of the main keyword, right, there was enough volume in those 40 or 50 to make a decent living, right? And I kind of did for a period of time. And then Google said, we're shutting that down, and it's going to include, it was exact match and similar variations, right? So it just, they took away that because it's not it's not beneficial to them and their bottom line to allow you to buy keywords for 10 cents when they can charge $6 for the same.
Exactly, especially when it's got that high intent. So that's where they started it, but I think it did go too far. And I mean, in other ways, they took away control, like you mentioned earlier, the daily spend cap. I mean, it used to be that the daily spend cap was like a hard cap, and that was amazing. You could really control how much you spent every day. They could average out for the month, But by the way, something you said earlier, like back in your affiliate marketing days, like you would find low-hanging fruit, and low-hanging fruit could have been, let's say, the misspelling of a search, right? So I think like a way to adapt today, the low-hanging fruit might just be a different angle. If you're selling car insurance in Orlando, then maybe then the low-hanging fruit might be like, okay, you're still bidding on that term car insurance in Orlando, but maybe you're at like life insurance, let's say, or I don't know, like insurance for like car insurance for tourists. I don't know if that's a thing, but what I'm getting at, or car insurance for young drivers. But what I'm getting at is that you can still find low-hanging fruit, but the difference is instead of it being directly in the keyword itself, it's going to be in that angle. And if you're able to present a different angle, then you're going to get traffic. Your ads are going to do better for that kind of traffic your quality score will go up, your CPCs will drop, and you also convert that niche in a way that other people who might be bigger advertisers, doing insurance companies, aren't, because they're not paying attention to that kind of granularity.
Yeah, I mean, again, back on Reddit, I've seen a lot of people talking about quality score. My quality score's 3, and but I think I'm doing everything right. Or no, not I think. I know I'm doing everything right, right? And I always kind of go, well, I'm sorry, I think I think your
Mm.
score disagrees, right? And when you
Yeah,
actually explain what the mechanisms of what makes up the quality score, right, and what the implications of it, right? I mean, think just having a low score is it's just low score. It doesn't matter, right? It really matters a lot because, it means that it's shown less frequently. And when it is shown, you tend to pay significantly more money than if the score was higher. And the
right.
reason for that is, there's 3 elements. There's the kind of the landing page experience. So that's what happens when they get to the site. There's the relevancy of the ad, right? So again, if the keyword is not on the page in some way, shape or form, whether it's in the title, in alt tags on images and stuff like that. And those are the 2 elements that kind of like are related to your end, like your site. And then there's obviously the other one is to do with the quality of the ad, right? If the ad is good, right, then that will get the expected click-through rate to be a decent level, right? So if you have a good expected click-through rate because you've written good ads, then you will get a higher quality by virtue of the fact you've written good ads, right? So it always sort of
Yeah.
starts with look at those 3 elements, see which one's the low one, and that's where you need to focus your attention, right? So it's always amazed me how people just assume that the 1 to 10 score is just a completely arbitrary thing, and there's no maths behind it. There is definitely behind
No,
it,
there's massive math.
right? And
There's maths. Yeah.
and I mean, I did a presentation way back 2019, and we'll come on to talk about presentations in a because Joel and I spoke about him trying back on the speaker second deck. But just to kind of finish off this point, so obviously on that, I had 2 slides. One which showed you what those 3 elements: click-through rate, the ad relevance, landing quality, the impact on if it was a quality score of 10, it was typically sort of up to 50% cheaper, and if it was like a quality score of 1, it was like 400 expensive, right? And that's how I've always said anything if you have 1s and 2s in your accounts, get rid of them. I'm not saying they're bad keywords. It's a bad experience that you created for the person that's typed that in, right? So if it had significant volume, I would probably take that one back to the drawing board and say, maybe we need a dedicated landing page just for that purpose, right? Because in that way, you will improve your quality score, which means that you've got more chances of actually winning the auctions
Yeah.
that you're in, and you'll money for them as a result of that. So what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that. Okay, well, earlier I was saying, Google is a business, Meta's a business, right? And at the end of the day, with Google ads, you don't, what they're selling, really, what their limited commodity is, eyes on ads. People, only so many people see the search result page for car insurance in Orlando. That's limited, right? And at the end of the day, what will make Google more money from ads? Well, it's an advertiser that has a higher click-through rate on an advertising competitor, right? If you're able to, if your ads get a CTR of 5%, and someone else's ads have a CTR of 2.5%, and Google can make twice as much money showing you first than your advertising competitor, charging the same cost for clicks. That's not how that auction works at the end of the day, but like that's kind of like what it means, right? So that's why I think that's why quality score is invented. Without quality, it used to be back in the day when I was running like ads at go2.com, like I was talking about, that was before they had quality score. Basically, what they were doing is they would show ads on top that had the highest bid. And what the end result would be that an advertiser who would have a lower click-through rate could be ranked higher than an advertiser with a higher click-through rate. Then Google came in and invented a quality score and basically said, look, if your click-through rate isn't there, then we're going to make it difficult for you to be seen. We're going to make it more expensive for you to be seen. And that sort of like helped fix things. I mean, it fixed things very, very, very well. So like, as far as like when I'm doing it, if I see a keyword with a quality score and it's a keyword I know that we really want, like it's really like impactful, it's actionable, people searching for it, they're ready to buy, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to split it into different ad group and really work on those ads in order to improve the CTR. And then what I find is that over time, if I'm able to get a very good CTR for those ads, that quality score go up. Now, of course, there are other factors like, landing page experience and like landing page load time, whatnot. But like from my experience, I've always like found that to be secondary, just simply because of the fact that at the end of the day, what makes Google more money out of all the factors related to quality score is CTR, because they get paid per click.
Yeah. So just to kind of change tack a little bit. So we were talking, we had a kind of you call to kind of just talk to make sure that, this would be a good podcast for Joel to be on, and that he'd be a good guest. And obviously we're here now, so tick both the boxes on those counts. But one of the things that we talked about at that useful to kind of talk about it here actually on the podcast is the subject of speaking at live events, right? In-person events, right? It was something that you used to do a lot of, right? And you're trying to get back into it. So why did you kind of like do it before? What made you stop, and why?
Oh, well, it just, okay. So basically back in the day, like I sold an advertising agency, like an agency that I, helped scale back in 2000. I opened in 2013, and then I got out of it in 2016. And before starting that, I had a bit of a transition period, in my life. And I really wanted to get into education. In fact, I was pushed to get it in, and by Anton, who, you brought up earlier, like encouraged us,
Anton could be very persuasive. He could be very
He's
persuasive.
very persuasive. No, what happened was that I went to Ukraine once he was living in Kiev, and I went there with a friend of mine just to accompany my friend who was speaking at an SEO conference there. That's where I met Anton. And afterwards, Anton kept pushing me like, look, why don't you speak? Why don't you speak? Why don't you speak? And eventually I gave in, and I kind of like found that it gave myself a lot of value, and it also gave the audience value. And I kind of got hooked with it. I started getting like involved with FCM Rushmore. I did the PPC Academy, which by the way, is like still a thing. Like every once in a while, someone will take it, get a certification from it, and you will get my certification, tag me on LinkedIn from it. And I love it. It's really rewarding, knowing that I'm helping people.
But the content of that was really well produced, really well put, obviously well thought through by you. And I know from my own experience, I watched it, right, that it's, I think you kind of tried to do it to be more of a sort of evergreen thing, right? Because I think the problem is if you go into too much in the tactical stuff, right, then the tactical stuff changes pretty quickly, right? And I think sometimes if you keep it at the higher level, right, then the presentation is more valuable for longer. But I think it also helps people to I think if you understand some background behind things, I think it helps you to kind of be able to understand how to position things.
You're 100% correct. And also a lot of the tactical stuff, as far as like the tactical stuff you learn, like Google teaches you that very, very, very well. Meta teaches you that very, very well. They're teaching strategy. You know what I mean? So that's like one reason why I did. They were actually pushing me to get more technical than I wanted to be. And I kind of felt like I was just doing like at some point step-by-step guides on like open campaigns, like basically walkthroughs, like click on this, then click on that, then click on that to add an ad group. Then this is where enter your keywords. And I wasn't so thrilled with that because I thought it was redundant to what you get just from like, Google search and whatnot. But yeah, you're right. That was something there. But then, so basically you asked about speaking, really more involved with it. And then I started PPC Designs, and I started getting, very involved with clients. And my focus then shifted to clients, which, is really my bread and butter. At the end of the day, that's how we get paid. I don't think there are any and there are very few internet marketing speakers out there who, who speak and have a significant income from it directly, right? Now I'm at a point where I'm actually looking to kind of juggle both, just because of the value that I add to myself by speaking, and also the value that I add, and also to help me scale my agency. Like one is to kind of grow. And the more I speak, the more I make people that I'm out there, what I have to offer. It's a campaign strategy, and basically I'm running awareness campaign.
In some respects, I think, conveying your knowledge. I mean, if you spoke in a conference and there'd be a bunch of people in the audience, you'd have like 40, 50 people would come up to you afterwards who were budget holders and decision makers, and they would be able to go, hey, I want you to come and work with me, right? And it was great. And I think we've kind of moved on. And I think in some respects, it's it's nice to see because I think it means that the industry's matured more, right? So what tends to happen is those people are not going to the shows now. They're sending their team members to go and learn more, right? So they typically in-house. So quite often they're there with, writing copious notes to kind of make sure that the latest kind of information, and then they will kind of go back to the office and kind of implement the things based upon what you've discussed. So I think the days of being able to go along and pick up 5, 10 new clients on the back of just speaking at a conference are gone. But that's not to say that it's still not. I mean, I've picked up definitely, new clients. I mean, I mentioned speaking at Barcelona about, as in quality score and stuff like that. And, I picked up, I think, 2 clients on the back of that because I was showing them something they'd never seen before. And they really saw value in what I was presenting to them. Because again, I wasn't just, hey, this is our performance gen. And I really kind of opened my soul in some respects to present, again, stuff that really sort of seen before. And I think that kind of helped me. But, but I think it's, for me, it's always a way of, people like me and you who've been here doing this a while. I think I think it's important to keep the industry going in the right direction. I think it's important that we help to provide a platform, hence the podcast, to provide a platform for the education of the next generation of digital marketers in form they come in, right? And, and obviously podcasting is a good way. Webinars are good. Both have done webinar, Anton and Duda quite recently. And, again, I enjoyed yours. And I had the opportunity to kind of interview as another guest on the podcast, because she's now got a new role as sort of product liaison for Microsoft Ads, right? Ads is a very sort of, they've had a bit of a bum deal in the way things have gone. And I think they've always, particularly productive for me. So seeing sort of Nava in there now has given me kind of good confidence that I think it'll move forward in the right way because she's got her eye in the kind of community where we are, but also kind of her sort of on as well. But I think, in that respect, I think it's one of those things. I think the opportunities to present now, I think more and more people are wanting to sort of speak. It's become a bit like a bucket list thing, right? I want to, present at a conference, right? And I've always kind of asked people, well, why do you want to do it, right? Well, I just want to say that I've done it. Right. And that's not the reason to go and present at a conference, right? Just to kind of cross it off a checklist, right? Done. What next? And that it's important to have, the kind of the genuine reason for being there should be to help educate the people that are in the audience, entertain in some respects, right? And, and I speaking, much like yourself, I had, commitments and everything else. And I just sort of took myself off the speaking circuit. Because I felt I was too white, too male, and too old. And then I realized that in actual fact, my OG-ness was probably one thing that I think stood the test of time. It's, I think it makes people like unique. Anyone that has been doing it for as long as we have, you can't fake longevity, right? There's lots of things you can fake, right? It's very easy to kind of fake testimonials, fake this, fake case studies, right? But you can't fake as long as you've been doing it, right? So, so I think it's still important that, you can kind of impart your knowledge before you decide that you're going to go off and retire or whatever, right? Still important that you impart your knowledge, help Kate. I think sometimes also, if you're trying to grow your agency, going and speaking at a conference can be a really good sort of interview process for people that are potential candidates to come and work with you, right? Because they look at you, watch you present, kind of meet you in the sort of casual breakout afterwards. Right, they have an opportunity to kind of get to know you a little bit better. The formal event, an interview to kind of get a job, right? And I think the one thing I've always found in our industry is people are very right. I've always said that lots of people don't really stay very long in one place. People expect them to stay forever. To be my dad would be 40 years man and boy working for the same company, and now if you can get 3 to 5 years out, right? I mean, I don't 3 years is kind of a stretch by any imagination. You look at anyone's LinkedIn profile, have had lots of them, right? So, so I think in some respects, that's part of the reason why speaking at conferences would be good. And certainly if you are an event organizer looking for good speakers, then maybe Joel and I can do a double act. We can kind of go and come together, right?
I love
But
that.
but I think,
No, but my experience is what matters the most. Like you're talking about strategy and tactics earlier. Like experience is like helps people become strategic thinkers. Okay, for example, you could learn people like digital marketing is a profession. It's a profession which in many ways drives economies. It's like that and make the majority of their money. Um, and you could learn everything it takes in order to, as far as features go and tools for Meta and Google Ads, you could learn it very, very quickly. There's maybe about just much documentation to get through, right? How much documentation do you have to get through in order to get a university degree to be another type of profession? It's massive. Anyone could learn how to do it, but really what makes you successful is having experience of being trusted with budget and pulling that trigger. When I say pulling that trigger, I'm talking about launching that campaign, about like launching, about having, let's say, a certain amount to spend that you're going to like basically like trust in a system on campaign you build around what you know and kind of put your name behind how it's going to perform. That and being able to do that confidence can only come from experience. And in that's why I have to say over and over again that like experience is by far the most valuable thing. And for people who are like just looking to get started in digital marketing, I'm like, look, get your certifications, Google, all the PPC platforms give them to you free, and then just get a job, any job you can, where you're trusted to some capacity with some sort of budget. Forget what the pay is going to be. Look at it as school, look at it as university, because you're going to, first of all, learn from your superiors. But second of all, you're going to get that hands-on experience that then you're going to then carry on to either grow in that company that you're at, or 6 months later, find another job, but with sickly doing the job under your belt.
yeah,
So
I've
yeah.
seen so many people who work in agencies who say they want their own agency. And,
So,
again, I've been doing it a long time. You have too. It's like, it's no walk in the park, right? It's really not as simple as people think it is. And, and I think sometimes the people who think it's easy are the ones that probably find it to be the hardest, right? They don't see a lot of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that makes things run smoothly, right, in the agency itself. I've always kind of maintained my job as the agency owner is to clear all the crap out of the way so they can come through behind it, that everything's going to work the way the way we've discussed as an agency. We're going to deliver, as you say, the campaigns that, you know, clients rely on our performance, right? I mean, in a lot of
yeah.
cases, we are a performance agency. So a lot of our compensation is tied to the performance, which means we're more selective than I think a lot of other agencies might be, right? Because for us, it's like if we've got our skin tied to the performance of the company we're working with, right? We need to make absolutely sure that, they've got their sort of stuff together, because if they don't, then going to suffer as a result of that, right? So, like I said, it's something that works for them because they feel that we've got skin in the game, because we have, right? And it works for us because if we deliver great results, we get compensated incredibly well, right? Regardless of how much
Yeah.
effort. I mean, I some of them, the biggest checks clients have ever cut me have come in months where we've had to do hardly any work at all because things have just been dialed in
I can tell you
so
the same
well,
stories as well.
right? So well, right? But they understand and accept, right, that there's equally times when things are going horribly wrong where we do tons of work and get paid next to nothing because we're just scrambling around trying to troubleshoot and solve problems. And that's, again,
Yeah.
that's kind of, all the good and none of the bad. You have to kind of accept both sides, on both sides, right? So clients and us have to accept that if things are going well, they cut a check. They don't even blink an eye. They just go, great, thank you so much. That's fantastic, right? Because I've always maintained we're putting far more money on the table than we ever take off it, right? And I think a lot of agencies don't operate that way. I mean, there was a guy who was
No, they don't.
complaining. He's complaining. He works for an agency, I think something like, 7 clients for a month, and he does an hour a day with each client. And the agency that he's working with have given him another 3 clients to look after. He's now basically saying, I've got, that basically means I've got like another 3 hours of work per day client, right? I'm thinking, it seems like, again, really excessive as being done for client. And, and I'm sort of thinking to myself, well, even if that's the case, he then sort of went on to say, that the 3 clients that he's been given, right, he actually hasn't done anything on them because he doesn't have the time, right? And I'm thinking, again, if you're the agency owner, why have you allowed that sort of scenario happen, right? I mean, you should be able to sort of see that a person is at capacity. Don't give them more capacity, expecting them to be able to just pick up. It doesn't work that way, right? And that's, to me, again, that's poor management on the agency owner side of things, but also feedback from their side to kind of, not.
I think it was representative of a different business model. Like, I think you and I are different in the aspect that we work off of performance. We look for performance. We understand what performance is. So the clients that we're going to work with, when we build our strategies, we're going to look at what's most effective in order to move the needle, in order to, like, really at the end of the day, bring more money down to the bank account, as opposed to other agencies. And I think this is the more popular way of thinking, which is basically to check off boxes. To be like, oh, okay, well, you need internet marketing. Okay, well, let's make sure you have all these things ticked off without really focusing on what matters. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, what matters is the sales funnel that can convert and campaign sources that can bring more revenue than they spend. That's it, right?
Yeah.
That's what we want to primarily focus on. And if we don't have that, then putting effort into social media presence, I mean, just for the sake of, like, social media and other places, really isn't going to matter. It's not going to help until you and I get that. But I think a lot of people who are just looking to take boxes don't, and I think that might be the type of business model that's the case of the agency from that, friend of yours that you're describing, where they're just basically selling lists of services as opposed to results.
Yeah. Yeah. So they have a monthly retainer. They have an expectation from the client that they're going to deliver a certain number of hours of work, right, with no accountability for performance, right? So it doesn't really matter. We did hours that we had on our kind of, our contract, so pay us, right? And, again, if it's sort of like, well, what did you actually do this month? You look at the change history, nothing at all, right? Well, why would I pay you anything if you haven't done anything, right? I mean,
look at the results.
Yeah. But, again, that's because you position it, again, I would those things right at the beginning, right? Before we've even kind of signed the agreement, I always position it and say, I'm really good at running paid search campaigns. I'm really crap at chasing people for money. Don't ever stiff me on bills. Don't not pay an invoice, because if you do, right, as far as I'm concerned, we're done, right? We're not, my relationship with you is to chase you for money. And, and they all go, no, and it never has, right? And, but equally.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. The reason for that is because you work off of results. And if you bring the results, why would they not pay?
Yeah. And again, like there's that goes on behind the scenes that clients don't really see. I mean, as you know yourself, like if you run an agency, you have a lot of money that you're paying out over and above the overheads of the people, right? You have a lot of money that's going out on, again, I mean, I don't pay necessarily a huge amount of money because I still think it's quite cost effective, right? But I warehouse all the kind of ad data from BigQuery, right? Using a sort of an ad transfer. So I've got all the historical data for clients I've worked with from whenever I could first do that, right? So I transfer that data. So I've got that data that I can interrogate. So if I ever need to work on a new client, I can kind of look at that historical data, right? So I store that data. The kind of I use Supermetrics a lot to kind of store some of the information there, right? One of the things that you always kind of see is people looking in Google Analytics and they're trying to compare Meta, Microsoft, Google, and they got all the Google cost data because Google kind of is a Google Analytics 4 is a Google ad product, and it kind of like links nicely and everything else. But then you see some of the performance data from, Microsoft and from Facebook, and you don't see any cost data at all, right? Because native kind of brought in. So, they kind of see the sales, the revenue, but they don't see any of the underlying costs. So it's almost like it makes GA4 completely worthless at that point, because you can't really evaluate to say, well, I ran this campaign in Google and Microsoft. I got this amount of revenue, but ultimately, again, you need to sort of look at, was the performance good from how much we spent versus how much we made? And if there's no how much you spent in there, then you have to find some other way of getting information out of there and put it in manually through a spreadsheet or whatever it might be, which just means that providing more, man hours to clients. I mean, with reporting, it used to be that reporting took a huge amount of time. And I really think that the time an agency owner should be spending is not on producing the reports. It should be on analyzing the data within reports. That's what you should be looking at, not, how long does it take to actually do the reports? And if it takes you 10 hours a month to produce the reports for clients, then that's 10 hours that you'll be able to do of analyzing, changing, strategizing, putting new studies. And that's really, I mean, I'd always kind of say that's some AI and automation you sort of take off the plate for you, right? You can
Definitely.
you can do so much now with it, right? But it relies on you being able to kind of set those sorts of things up in the first place, but understanding it brings to the table, right? But again, so
As a big data guy, because I know you're really, really into data and you're really into measurements. And I find it interesting what you said about using this historical data with BigQuery. And you've been doing it for a while. I mean, a question for you, like, do you find that are you using AI to dive into that data? Because like with AI, it's like you could, kind of like go through tons and tons of data very, very quickly to get sites.
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I had to kind of like have a fairly steep learning curve for trying to understand how the SQL worked to kind of queries to be able to interrogate the data. What you're finding now, there's a guy called Hugh Sharma who runs a blog called, I think it's Optimize Smart or something like that. I'll leave a link comments in the description. But, he's a prolific writer about stuff. He's written books on it. And he's basically got like a cheat sheet, if you like, for writing SQL queries using AI, right? So you can basically write a SQL query to interrogate your GA4 data without having to kind of know a single thing about SQL, right? Which I think is amazing to be able to do that, right? Because for me, it was a really steep learning curve to get to that point, right? But again, it's just understanding like there's a lot of data that goes in there, right? And some of it is just noise, and a lot of it is signal, and you just need to be able to understand the signal, where's the pull out from there. So
Yeah.
So yes.
Okay, no, it's all for analysis as well. Like I use it, like one thing I'll use it for, I'll take search and I'll have it like break down, for example, like what percentage of the searches are irrelevant, what percentages might come from highly Apple terms, come from like awareness term, whatnot, to help me like optimize, my ad groups.
Yeah. I mean, it's like in GA4, right? In most cases, you look at reports in GA4 itself, right? And some data a lot. So, they kind of don't have enough to be able to kind of report it all. That data goes to, BigQuery, right? So I can kind of extract GA4, updates in kind of pretty much in real time. So again, you can kind of interrogate as kind of queries are coming in, visitors are coming in, you create reports, show that. Again, data or Looker Studio is great for sort of having the nice front-facing thing. All that data can kind of feed you. So, again, it's just understanding how you can kind of get the data out BigQuery into kind of Looker Studio reports. And again, I think for me, it is
It's another story altogether.
absolutely, but but it also, like it instead of having to kind of spend all the time creating the reports, I can actually spend all of the time analyzing the reports and working out what to do next. And that's been the most invaluable thing, because ultimately
Right.
it is about that whole thing to do with performance. I mean, I've had a couple of what I consider to be home runs of, I discovered keywords that nobody else heard of, right? Where, I used to sort of scrape and stuff. And I used to kind of see all these keywords. So like when you had these broad match terms, they would show you what the actual term that they matched was. And, and again, it's hard to kind of look through it all in one hit, but, you'd see some keywords that would have a reasonable amount of statistical significance in terms of the volume, right? And sometimes I'd look at it and go, I don't even know what that word means, right? But it obviously meant something to a certain number of people. And then you could kind of isolate that term, put it into a campaign, run it, the only person bidding on it. And, and again, you clean up for a period of time, right? Because, nobody else was bidding on it. There was no sort of deviation of, the exact match, but not really an exact and broad match and everything else. It was just, you could bid and clean up. And, but unfortunately, those are few and far between. But again, I still try and do that. I still try and interrogate some of the underlying data that kind of is available, right? I think a lot of the kind of keyword data, when that went, there is still more, information the underlying sentiment of, the search behavior of what people, again, it's like, it's not even about what keyword is it, what landing to, what did they do afterwards? And, certainly with old GA, you could kind of understand demographic, the information, age, genders, locations. So you could kind of model all that sort of stuff out. So we used to spend so much time modeling those types of things out, right? And Google have dumbed it down. They said, oh, we can let our AI
Mm.
can do it all now, right? And it's just like, well, no, it doesn't. I mean, you know, if you,
That's also privacy. Remember
yeah,
Facebook Analytics?
yeah,
Do you remember that? That was freaking incredible. Remember when you
amazing.
used to learn about people
Yeah,
back then? Amazing, amazing, amazing. And they didn't dumb it down because they dumbed it down for another reason. It was because it had to do with the election, like the scandal with Cambridge Analytica.
yeah,
They discovered that like Facebook's getting too much information about people,
yeah.
and then they had to, kill it.
But the irony is that the sources of places where data, Facebook were getting all of their data from still exist, right? There are still hundreds and hundreds of these sort of data information about, people that have an American Express card, like every single transaction
Yeah,
value,
credit
how
card
much money they
partners.
spend, whether what they've sort of stuff. So like loads and loads of, pollsters that do all these surveys of people. And that information is still available for savvy advertisers to kind of to run ads on, but through Facebook, right? Direct, right? You can kind of do it indirectly by building the audience elsewhere and then porting it across, but it's like not easy to do. And very few people that I'm aware of are doing it, right? But it's still possible.
No, I've seen companies that do that for you, that help you do that, but Facebook still gets that data though, don't they? I think they just only, they used to be called partner categories,
Yeah,
where you could like, let's say, target people based on their purchase habits because creditor companies would sell people's purchase information to Facebook
yeah.
and you could reach them in aggregate. But I believe they still get that data. They just don't, when you target, Facebook still gets that data. I think, their own campaign targeting will eventually find those people use.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, because people using cell phones have become so ubiquitous now, right? Device, wherever you go, is kind of
Mm.
telling the people that have much about it, right? And if you look at it, like I work with a company and they have like access to all of the apps, right? They can tell exactly apps people have got installed on their phones. So again, let's say obviously you would know all the sort of traditional apps like your Gmails and so on and so on, right? But if you were trying to target people that were high net worth people, right? There might be people that read Bloomberg, people that, have their Wall Street Journal app installed on their phone and all that. So there could be a whole bunch of apps that by the nature of the type of things that they provide, right? You could imply that this
Mhm.
particular person has a certain degree of knowledge and wealth, right? Just by virtue of the fact that they
Yeah,
got
but even without the app, like Facebook will know because of like almost every website out there has Facebook. We can't help but say Facebook, but yeah, the Meta Pixel, right? There's
yeah,
a tracking pixel on almost every single site out there,
yeah,
right? People are on their web browsers, they're logged into Facebook, and they're visiting websites. So basically, like Meta knows who's visiting Bloomberg. Meta knows. I mean, there's a reason why, like, let's say, I mean, I'm sure like almost everybody's noticed this at this point, that if you're like interested in a product and then you open up Instagram, you're going to start seeing ads for competitors of that product.
yeah.
How do they know? Because they know that you visited that website because that pixel is there. So they know this. So not only are they able to get app data, I mean, they just know the most basic stuff, which I think is not that high tech. And which is just basically who's browsing because of that pixel, which is in every site.
Yeah. And like on my phone, I've got a sort of Samsung phone, Android. So like I've got the Samsung
Mm.
Health app, right? And if I leave my phone on the side by the bed, right, it'll tell me exactly how much snoring I did in the evening, right? So I could, like, if my wife says, "Oh, you were snoring a lot," I could actually validate that whether that's true or not by looking at the evidence, right? And not only does it actually show
Like,
you
no, you're
how
just
long,
being mean.
not only does it show you how long you snored for, it will actually record you snoring, which is even worse. Like that's honestly the most creepy thing I think I've got on my phone is that capability, right? But again, to your point, I think a lot of the people are very naive to assume that things are not being recorded, sent back somewhere to enable the these specific ads to kind of appear. People go, "I'm
Yeah.
just talking now, all of a sudden I'm seeing it in my ads." It's like,
No,
guess
nobody's
guess
listening
what?
to you. It's just but I think one out there, which isn't true, is that like, your phone's listening in on you. And that's why you might say something and then see an ad right
Yeah.
away. That's really not happening. It's just that targeting is very good. And it's not every time that you speak about something that you get, you just notice it when it happens.
Also, it's kind of like generally speaking, you're talking about something because you're having a conversation with somebody, and quite often the
Yeah.
conversation will lead to, I'm just going to go to Google and I'm going to type something in, right? And that's what has triggered the particular and put your audience, right? So, that's usually kind of the reason why, you start seeing ads for the, you think, how on earth am I kind of doing that?
And by the way, I think people are inherently, in a way, selfish without realizing it, because because people hear this. I'm not talking about internet marketers, like generally consumers, just the general population. They get freaked out by this. They're thinking like, oh, wow, we're getting tracked. So the way ads can be served to us as if it's a bad thing. And in many ways, it might look on the surface like it's a bad thing. But guess what? If advertising didn't exist online, people would not be able to get the content that's out there. I mean, the publishers would not be able to afford it. Facebook and Meta and Facebook, Instagram, and all these other apps out there, not just, I mean, they wouldn't be able to exist without advertising. And if they were to exist, they'd have to charge very, very, very hefty subscription fees, right? To where just basically the internet wouldn't work. Advertising enables all of these great products and services, which are generally free, and also, by the way, in content, like all these publishers, to provide us with everything that they're able to do without really charging anything. And it's only because of ads. And not only that, the better the ads work, the more the publishers are able to make, the easier it is for them to survive, to provide better services. And I'm going to say something even like more beneficial to society. The better ad targeting is, the easier it is for small businesses to be successful. The better Facebook and Google is at gathering information on you to provide advertisers with effective targeting, the easier it is for a small business to come out with a product and service and compete with big guys, because that targeting helps them compete. Without it, there's no profits. Without it, whoever's able to, shout the loudest, broadcast the most message, the ones who are able to get market share, So I have a very strong opinions on it. And I think that like most don't realize it and understand why, why being tracked and being served ads is actually a positive thing.
Yeah,
for society.
I'm always amazed. Like I'm in the UK, so yeah, but under GDPR, and like there's a whole big thing going on at the moment with consent mode, permission, V2, and all that sort of stuff. And what I'm finding amazing is when you sort of talk to people, like so every single site in the European Union has to have a consent mode banner that says, I accept targets or I reject them, or I can choose which one I want to accept or not. And I've always kind of maintained, like, as soon as I see one of those, I click on accept immediately. I just know there's tracking cookies and functional cookies and everything else. I want to ensure that I provide the best experience for me, right? And also I want to make sure if I am going to be served ads, which I know I am, I want to make sure that they're relevant to the interests that I have, not just random ads just because I've rejected the ads on a particular site. So I'm seeing stuff that's not relevant to me. It's like, well, then do yourself a favor. Anyone watching this video now, do yourself a favor. Accept all the ads, right? Because regardless of whether you accept or reject, you're still going to see ads, right? All you're doing by accepting is making the experience more personalized to you and your interests.
Right. But then there are people out there who like, and I think one reason why people say, no, oh, I don't want to be tracked, like as if someone's actually paying attention to them. And at the end of the day, my answer to that is like, you're not that important. None of us are that important. No one is going to, I mean, first of all, the technology is not even there. They don't let the technology exist to where you can be personally identified and someone could say, okay, these are the sites that so-and-so is visiting. That's not even there, right? But even if it was to be there, nobody cares. Nobody cares about you. I mean, people care about you, but nobody cares about what sites you're visiting. You're not that important. I'm not that important. Almost not. You know what I mean? And so at the end of the day, people have this grandiose sense of like, my privacy matters because everyone wants to look at me and I'm that interesting. When at the end of the day, nobody is.
Yeah. And I've always kind of maintained, if I'm in market for something, like, so let's say I'm in market for buying a new phone, I don't want to have to jump through like Ninja Warrior style hoops to try and find the information about, which is the best phone or whatever it might be. I just want to be able to get to the answer quickly to make a decision, right? I don't want to have to kind of trawl my bunch of stuff because I haven't kind of given permission. So a lot of the experience that I'm having is not as personal as it could be. So hence the results are kind of they're not optimal for kind of what I'm actually doing, right? I mean, people, I sort of sit and watch like Amazon Prime and Paramount and Disney Plus. I watch all the sort of different paid for subscriptions, right? So I pay for a subscription to Paramount, pay for a subscription to Amazon Prime, which means I can watch Amazon TV. right? And they recently a kind of like, advertising on their platform, which you pay, right? Maybe $3, $4 to kind of get rid of. So I have a choice. I can either say my time is worth more money than the dollars a month to kind of get rid of the ads so I can kind of watch it without ads, right? Or not. And that's my choice. But, equally, they could say, okay, well, we won't provide ads, but we're going to increase the price by $20, right? And I'm like, well, okay, then I have a choice of, do I want to continue with Amazon or not? I mean, there's so many different things that you can kind of make a decision on based upon what's presented to you, right? But again, it's entirely up to me, my decision, right? It's like if you go to some sites, they'll allow you to read maybe one article. Then if you want it, then you have to pay, a nominal fee to kind of like get behind the paywall, right? But that's what
Yeah.
journalists, they kind of like they're paid to provide stories about a particular topic, and they're into the research and everything else. It's like, well, those publishers are going to make their money from somewhere, right? They either make it ungated and everything's free, as in you don't have to pay to kind of get behind the paywall, and then you get bombarded with pop-ups and banners and God knows what else, and it really makes the experience suboptimal, right? Or you go for a bull, get behind it, no ads, and that's a choice, right? And I think that the more people accept that that's what you're dealing with, then the better, really.
Yeah, but you bring that up, and what comes to mind is YouTube Premium.
Yeah.
And it's either basically for a small monthly fee, you could, get YouTube without ads. And I'll tell you, like, there's a downside to advertisers there, and which is like basically they're people who are price sensitive and they're people who are more likely to spend. So because YouTube offers that feature, it makes it harder to it basically eliminates being able to target on people who aren't price sensitive, who pay a little bit not to see those ads. And I think if Meta was to do that, it would make a difference. It would make it much harder to do e-commerce, and be making much harder higher ticket items, because those people would opt out of it, but paying for it.
So look, we obviously talked for a while. I'm conscious of your time, my time watching. I'm going to kind of like leave some parting thoughts. What if people wanted to kind of get in touch with you? What would be the purpose, and what would you suggest the best way for them to do that would be?
Oh, look, I just love ideas. I love brainstorming. I love the bit of marketing. I look at every single, business or offer online as like as a different adventure. Just figuring out how to approach it, how to strategize it, and how to make everything just align in a way that you're able to invest in PPC to where you get a positive return really excites me just for the sake of it. So, I mean, if someone just has something they want to talk about, do get in touch. I'll speak with anybody, brainstorm with anybody. And if it feels right, then maybe there's a way we can work together. You could reach me by email, joel@ppcdesigns.com. You could visit, ppcdesigns.com as well. Fill out the form on the website, get in touch with me, and myself and my team more than happy to, follow up with you and, give you service.
So that was today's
also
episode.
by social media as well. Sorry.
That's okay. So that was today's guest, Joel Bondorowsky, who has come to us from PPC Designs. All of his contact details will be available in the show notes after the event gets published, or the episode gets published. It just remains, Joel, for me to thank you for being such a phenomenal guest on the show. And anyone that's watching on YouTube, I'm going to put this kind of last screen on here. If you are watching on YouTube, please do us a favor. Thank you so much for watching, but don't forget to subscribe. That sends Google signals, YouTube signals, that it's a podcast that's worth following and worth watching. And then they'll send more people that are involved in digital marketing to come on and kind of learn more about it. So with that, thanks again, and we'll see you on the next episode of Digital Marketing Stories.
Thank you, Jim. It's really been a pleasure. Be in touch.
Brilliant. So let me come back here. Yeah. So there we go. We're all done. We're all good.
That was fun. I didn't